Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 61 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
What's happening, man?
You know, every time I hear that intro theme music, I get all jazzy.
70s pornish?
And I think you're about ready to break out a little bit of your Yaz flute.
My Yaz?
But it doesn't happen.
No.
I keep thinking it's going to.
No, I keep my flute where it belongs.
So how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm stupendous. I'm feeling stupendous, man.
Wow, stupendous.
Stupendous.
That should be our word for the episode.
That's a word, all right.
Stupendous.
Just flowed right out.
It did. Just flowed right out. Gibby got a new thesaurus app on his phone that he's working out.
Yeah. The word of the day.
All right, Gibbs, we got some new Patreon supporters. Let's give some shout outs.
Awesome.
We had Jenna Murray.
Thanks, Jenna.
Rachel, I'd like to drive a Bentley.
Oh, yeah. Like that.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
Jennifer Trumbly.
Yeah. Trembling.
Jen Guerin.
Yeah. Jen, thank you.
We talked about astronauts last week. Wasn't there a astronaut named like Dick Guerin? Or an astronaut named Guerin? I was thinking there was. I could be mistaken.
So why are you asking? Is the Patreon name Garen?
I just said Jen Guerin.
Oh, yeah. Why does
You got to stay with me in the
work
show.
with you? Work with you. Gotcha. Work with me, Gibby. Work with me.
We had Sharon Diaz.
Diaz. I like that last name. Diaz.
Carolyn YK.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you don't need all the rest of the letters.
A little mysterious.
Yeah.
Some people just want to be mysterious. We had Kelly Morris.
Thank you, Kelly.
Samara Jacobs.
Hello, Samara.
Yep, that is a very cool name. Then we had Ween Baba Booey Farnsworth.
Old Farnsworth stepping in again. Is that from Willy Wonka or something?
I don't know, Baba. We know where Baba Booey's from.
Farnsworth. Is that the guy? Who's the guy that's trying to steal the everlasting gobstopper?
I don't know, but you keep saying Farnsworth. It's Farn. There's an
Farnsworth.
R. Yeah, Farnsworth.
Let me know. Look it up.
Rachel Zen.
Yeah, she's at peace, like you say.
Andrew Breck.
Cool.
Layla Shake.
It's like the name Layla.
It's very cool. Mm-hmm. Layla.
Or that.
Love that song, man. Stephanie Lynn.
Yeah.
Then we had Kim Weeks and Katie Quigley. And, you know, big supporters. Katie has been doing a lot of stuff for us lately.
She has.
And I combined them because they've been Patreon supporters, but they just jumped to our highest level. So they get an extra special shout out.
Yeah, big time. Thank you.
We had Sean Tomlinson and Colleen Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
From The Matrix.
Yeah. Could be Colleen's, relative.
Fictional relative?
Yeah.
Could
you
be.
never know. Stranger
Right,
Things.
And if we get Stranger Things?
Yeah.
You're just trying to work in as many pop culture references as you can. If we go back into the vault, this week we selected Lindsay Whitehead, been with us for a very long time.
Lindsay.
And we appreciate that support. We appreciate all the new Patreon support we get. And then on PayPal Gibbs, we got a lot of support in the last few weeks as well. We had Allison Sandel.
Awesome.
Cheryl Matalazzo.
Matalazzo, I like that.
Who's a repeat supporter.
Yeah.
Had Philip Feiner gave a very large donation to the
Nobody
show.
finer than the Philip.
I like that. We had Kristen Burns.
Thank you.
And then Tracy Campbell made a sizable donation.
Awesome.
As did Katie Quigley.
She's everywhere.
She's just pouring it on.
Or see her at CrimeCon, I'm guessing.
Probably. But, yeah, we appreciate all the support. I know it sounds like a broken record, but we do because it allows us to keep doing what we're doing.
Yep. We need it. We appreciate it.
We don't ask for it. We just like to say how much we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Now, you said CrimeCon, Gibbs. It's coming up quick.
It's going to be here within a month.
So if you're going, great. Drop us a line at truecrimeallthetime@gmail.com.
Yes.
We're trying to coordinate a meetup.
I know we got several people that want to do the meetup, so we just need to kind of get a guesstimate of like how many.
And
see where we can do this at.
And I think I might find somebody that's willing to kind of coordinate it for us.
Yeah.
Help us out with that. And if you haven't signed up, but you want to, make sure if you're going through the website, the CrimeCon website, use our promo code TCAT, TCATT, get 10% off your standard badge.
And if you see Mike walking around, just approach him. He's very approachable.
I'm like a regular person.
Yeah, just walk right up to him.
I'm actually more regular than most people.
Yeah. So just walk right up and say, hey, Mike, how you doing?
And you won't be able to miss Gibbs because he will be the one walking around in chaps with his ass hanging out.
Yeah, that'd be me, that guy.
Unless he's sitting down on podcast row, and then you won't be able to tell.
Unless some strange reason that weekend they have like a assless chaps convention, and they're just everywhere.
We love to say assless chaps because we love it when people say all chaps are assless.
Yeah. Just a bunch of guys walking around in chaps. They're like, is that Gibby? No, that looks like Gibby. Is that Gibby?
Which one of those is
Gibby?
Yeah,
which one are you, Gibby?
Check out our website for contact information, merch. You can find the Patreon button, the PayPal button. All of that's out there on the website.
Good stuff.
And right now, as this episode is dropping, we have a True Crime All the Time episode. Aaron Michelle Caffey. This is one of those ones, Gibbs, that scares me down to my core because we're talking about a 16-year-old who makes the fateful decision that her family has to die.
So anybody that has kids that are in those late teenage years, it shakes you a little bit, right?
Or if you got young kids and you're thinking about, oh my gosh, this is what I got to look forward to. Yeah, it does. Those ones shake me up a little bit, and just how do people come to that decision? But definitely check it out. All right, Gibbs, let's get into this episode. We're talking about the Connecticut River Valley Killer. And this is another unsolved killer that has garnered a whole bunch of monikers, nicknames over the years. You may see it as the Valley Killer, the New Hampshire serial killer, the Kelleyville Killer. But no matter what name you see it as, this is a serial killer responsible for at least 7 victims over a time frame from 1978 through 1987. All of this occurred in the New Hampshire, Vermont area. And this is a serial killer that chose the method of stabbing his victims. And we've talked about that on other episodes, Gibbs. That's a very specific way of committing a murder.
Very personal, I think.
Very up close. And from my way of thinking, there's danger involved in choosing that method.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I can handle a K-bar like no other.
We know that.
But yeah, you put yourself at risk because at that point, you're so close to your victim. You know, you're putting yourself at jeopardy as well.
It's not like you're shooting someone from, 10 feet away.
Right.
You have to get into their personal space. Now, it can be done in a variety of ways. It can be done from behind. It can be done. But still, you are putting yourself into another person's personal space.
Exactly.
And you can't guarantee how that is going to transpire.
No.
Now, you can take steps to have it go your way. But I think it's important to point out that, why do certain killers pick the methods that they do?
Well, as far as the stabbing goes with a knife, I think this is an extension of the person's body, man. I mean, when you carry a knife and you use that knife all the time, you feel everything that it does.
All right. You, again, giving out a lot of information that could potentially come back on you, but we appreciate the candor.
I'm just saying.
So in 1985 and 1986, the skeletal remains of 2 women were recovered about 900 feet from one another in the woods in Kelleyville, New Hampshire.
That's fairly close.
900 feet?
Yeah.
That's not very far to find 2 separate sets of remains in 2 separate years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to put it in perspective. I would say that's like, what, 7, 8 houses apart?
Well, it depends on where you live.
Yeah, well, that's true. What kind of homes you have.
Some people's neighbors are much closer than others.
Yeah.
But I get your
How about
method
this?
of
It's like walking in.
estimation.
It's the distance between walking in the grocery side of Walmart or walking in the non-grocery side of Walmart.
All right, let's go with that.
Maybe that spread right there is about 900 feet, maybe.
Yeah, let's go with that because
Okay.
most Walmarts are similar.
Yeah.
But housing is not. So it's not a great way to mark off
I think we get your point.
distances.
Yeah.
Gibby's like, shut up.
Yeah.
Go on.
Move on.
Now, these remains were not in good condition. They had been out in the woods for some time, which made it very hard to determine cause of death. But what they could determine was that both of these women had been stabbed.
And I guess that, with skeleton remains, you can see the nicks into the bone.
Yeah, I would think that's how they would make that determination.
Yeah.
Now, also during this time, the remains of a third body would be found. Again, another female, and her autopsy would confirm that she had been stabbed several times. And then you have a fourth woman. She was 36 years old. Her body was found during this time frame, and it was determined that she was stabbed in a brutal attack in her house in Saxton River, Vermont. So the police start to look at any other crime in the area that appeared to be similar.
So they're going to do what most good investigators do, right? They're going to look at, neighboring areas. They're going to look back. They're going to go back 5, 10 years to see if they see any other similar patterns that they're seeing with these ones, just to see if they can tie anything together.
And it would make sense because these were very similar, right? In a lot of respects, the stabbing, the female victims, some in the woods. So they have some similarities here. And like you mentioned, Gibbs, they go back a number of years looking at different cases, and they would find 2 murders, one that took place in 1978, the other took place in 1981, and they would use the information from these cases to help them formulate an MO of the killer. So they're using all the information that they've gathered from the remains they found, these 2 other murders that were very similar. So they're looking at how the bodies were dumped, how and where. And they're also looking at similarities in the victims. And it's during this time of the investigation, another woman would be attacked, but she would live. So now we want to dive into some of the details of the murders. On October 24th, 1978, 27-year-old Kathy Milliken was last seen in the Chandler Brook Wetland Preserves in New London, New Hampshire. Kathy was there to take pictures of birds, and it would be the next day that they would find her body with over 29 stab wounds.
29, man.
It's a lot.
That's aggressive.
And normally we talk about how that indicates some type of rage. And interestingly, Kathy's body was found just a few feet away from where she had last been seen. On July 25th, 1981, 37-year-old Mary Elizabeth Critchley was last seen near Interstate 91, near the Massachusetts-Vermont border. She had been hitchhiking to Waterbury, Vermont. And it wouldn't be until August 9th until her body was found in a wooded area off Unity Stage Road in Unity, New Hampshire. And because of the condition that her body was found in, the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact cause of death. Now, these are the 1978 and 81 cases that we talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, that the police did on the look back.
Right?
Yep.
Police found these as they were looking back into cases that had similarities. Then we jump forward in time to May 30th of 1984. 16-year-old Bernice Courtemanche was a nurse's aide that was last seen by her boyfriend's mother in Claremont. She was thought to have set out to see her boyfriend in Newport, and she did this by hitchhiking along New Hampshire Route 12. But she never reached her destination, and she was reported missing. And it's not going to be for 2 years. So April of 1986, that a fisherman found her remains. And during the forensic examination, it was uncovered that there was evidence of knife wounds to her neck and an injury to her head.
It just goes back to this whole hitchhiking to me. It's just, there's never a good outcome, man.
We have done a surprisingly high number of murders that started with somebody hitchhiking.
I mean, if there's one thing that you could take away from all these episodes is don't hitchhike.
And people would say to you, Gibby, wear your seatbelt.
And people would say to me, why wear your seatbelt?
So they can take that away from us.
Yeah.
You take away
That's
from them.
my takeaway. Wear my seatbelt.
Wear your seatbelt. On July 20th, 1984, 27-year-old Ellen Freed was a supervising nurse at Valley Regional Hospital. She was last seen making a late-night stop to use a payphone in Claremont. Ellen called and spoke to her sister for about an hour. And that's a long conversation from a payphone.
Yeah, but I mean, if you didn't have a phone at home, and 84, not big cell phone time yet. I mean, that's like Mommy Vice
brick
phone stuff,
Not many people had cell phones in 84, I don't think.
Yeah. So I guess you pull over, find the closest payphone, and start making your calls.
And I think back to that time period, there were payphones everywhere, right? You can't even hardly find a damn payphone today.
No,
Not
you
that
can't.
Because nobody really needs one.
Right.
Everybody has a cell phone, but back then they didn't. So payphones were everywhere. I guess what just jumps out at me is how many people usually back then stopped at a payphone to talk to somebody for an hour? That seems like a long time.
It is. Seems extreme.
Yeah, usually payphones were for, short conversations. Hey, I'm on my way, or are you there?
Yeah, I'm not somebody that normally talks lengthy on the phone anyway.
Oh, me neither.
But occasionally you get that right person, some reason you can find yourself on the phone longer than you ever thought. But maybe sisters have something,
Well, they do. They do.
My call with my brother would last 5 minutes.
So she's on this hour-long call with her sister when she makes a comment to her sister about a strange car that has been driving back and forth in the area of the payphone. And this call, Gibbs, goes on so long that at one point she lays the phone down, goes over to her car, starts it up just to make sure that everything's working. Then she goes back to the phone. She finishes this call with her sister after, however many minutes longer. She says goodbye and hangs up the phone with her sister. The next day, Ellen doesn't report to work, and her car was found abandoned on Jarvis Road. And this is just a few miles away from the market where she used the payphone. Her remains would be found in a wooded area near the banks of the Sugar River in Kelleyville in September. And again, the autopsy exam would reveal evidence of multiple stab wounds, and this time it showed a probable sexual assault. So we've had 2 murders very close together in 1984, right? End of May, towards the end of July for the second one. Now we're going to fast forward essentially a whole year to July 10th of 1985. 27-year-old single mother Eva Morse was last seen hitchhiking near the border of Claremont and Charleston, New Hampshire. This is on Route 12. And again, Gibbs, this hitchhiking,
it's not healthy.
This is the last time that anyone would see Eva Morse alive. She was reported missing, and her remains would not be found until the next year, 1986. They were found by some loggers just about 500 feet from where Elizabeth Critchley's body had been discovered in 1981. So this is very interesting information because it's almost like this is a familiar dumping ground for someone. They're coming back to use this area again because they're familiar with it.
Yeah, they feel confident that they can get in and out of there without being seen.
Now, autopsy examination on Eva Morse found evidence of knife wounds to her neck. On April 15th, 1986, 36-year-old Linda Moore was working in her yard at her home in Saxton's River, Vermont, just a short distance from I-91. And it would be that evening that her husband would return home from work to find his wife dead from multiple stab wounds. And police could tell from the crime scene that there was a major struggle that had taken place. They found numerous witnesses that reported having seen a slightly stocky, dark-haired man with a blue knapsack lingering near their home on the day of the murder. They said the man was probably between 20 to 25 years old, clean-shaven, round face, wearing dark-rimmed glasses. And police would eventually release a composite sketch based on the descriptions given by these numerous witnesses. On January 10th, 1987, 38-year-old nurse Barbara Agnew was driving home from a ski trip that she had with friends in Stratton, Vermont. And it was late that evening that a snowplow driver encountered her green BMW at a northbound I-91 rest stop in Hartford, Vermont. Her door was cracked, there was blood on the steering wheel, and it wouldn't be until a couple of months later, March 28th, 1987, that her body was found near an apple tree in Hartford, Vermont. She had been stabbed to death. But going back to the night of her disappearance, there was a very heavy snowstorm in that area. And she was only about 10 miles from her home.
Yeah, man, she was so close. I mean, 10 miles in a heavy snowstorm could be, take you half an hour. But still, I mean, she was so close. And besides the fact that the snowstorm must have been too much, there really is no reason that they can figure out why she would have pulled into the rest area.
And I think that has really puzzled investigators over the years. Why would you pull into a rest stop or rest area when you're only 10 miles from your house? Yeah, now, there are some reasons. Snow's too bad.
Yeah.
Bathroom break. So, I mean, you can think of a couple of different plausible reasons.
Yeah, but typically if you're 10 miles, you're talking 10 minutes. So 10, 15 minutes.
And then we fast forward all the way to August 6th of 1988. And this is when 22-year-old Jane Borowski, she's 7 months pregnant at the time, was returning from a county fair in Keene, New Hampshire. She pulled over at a closed convenience store in West Swansea to buy a can of pop from a vending machine. Borowski returned to her car after buying the drink, and she noticed a Jeep Wagoneer parked next to her. Through the rearview mirror, Borowski saw the driver of the vehicle walking around to the back of her vehicle. He approached her open window and asked her if the payphone was working, and then immediately he grabbed her and pulled her out of her car. Borowski struggled against her attacker, and this man accused her of beating up his girlfriend. And he asked her if she had Massachusetts plates on her car. She told him that no, she had New Hampshire plates, but this guy didn't stop attacking. He proceeded to stab her 27 times before driving away and leaving her to die. And this woman, Gibbs, she is something else. She's 7 months pregnant. She's been stabbed 27 times. She's able to get back to her car, climb inside, and drive down Route 32 towards a friend's house for help. So she's driving down the road, nearing her friend's house, when all of a sudden she realizes the vehicle that is driving directly in front of her is the Jeep Wagoneer of her attacker. She finally reaches her friend's house and her friends come out. They rush out to her aid. Her attacker makes a U-turn and slowly passes by the house as Borowski was being tended to before speeding away into the night. So this story is just amazing. She ends up being treated at the hospital where they determine that the attack resulted in a severed jugular vein, 2 collapsed lungs, a kidney laceration, and severed tendons in her knees and her thumb. So a very vicious attack that she was able to survive. And not only that, get in her vehicle and drive for help. Amazing. And what makes this story even more miraculous is that the baby survives as well, but not without complications. Borowski's daughter is later going to be diagnosed with mild cerebral palsy. Jane Borowski was able to provide authorities with a composite sketch and the first 3 characters of her attacker's license plate.
There was a criminal psychologist named John Philpin, and he helped develop the profile of the killer. And he made several trips to see where the 2 bodies of Bernice and Ellen was found to kind of get a better understanding and get into the mindset of the killer. But he also interviewed Jane Borowski, and he actually put her under hypnosis. And so she described to him in detail about the brutal attack that happened. And she also remembered that her attacker seemed extremely calm, and that she also recalled how he stopped struggling with her and that he kind of lost interest in the attack. And then he also was able to get from her what those 3, the license plate numbers. So she was able to tell him that they were the numbers of 662, and that she, as we said, she believed the vehicle was between a 75 and 85 Jeep Wagoneer. And based off that information, that it was a Jeep Wagoneer between 75 and 85 and license plate numbers of 662, they were able to narrow it down to a possible 350 vehicles.
But the killing stopped after the attack on Jane Borowski, and the case eventually went cold. All right, Gibbs, so now we get into suspects. And the first suspect we want to talk about is a man by the name of Delbert Tallman. On May 20th, 1984, a 16-year-old girl by the name of Heidi Martin went for a jog in Heartland, Vermont on Martinsville Road. The next day, her body was found in a swampy area behind an elementary school. She had been raped and stabbed to death. Delbert Tallman was 21 years old, and he confessed to this crime. He was tried for the murder and found guilty. But later on, he recanted his confession and he got an acquittal. 3 years later, the body of Barbara Agnew was found about a mile from where Heidi Martin was discovered. So this man, Delbert Tallman, he lived in Bellow Falls, Springfield, and Windsor, Vermont, as well as Claremont, New Hampshire. So he was, the places that he resided were basically in the center of where most of these Connecticut River Valley killings occurred.
So there's a tie-in.
There's a tie-in.
We know that he has been accused of terrible things, and he was in the area.
He was convicted in 1996 on 2 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct with a child, and he was incarcerated in Florida for failure to comply with sex offender registration requirements. He got out of prison in October of 2010. So there have been a lot of people that have speculated that he was part of this. There have been a lot of people that have speculated that he had nothing to do with the Connecticut River killings and that Heidi Martin's murder is a one-off unsolved case. But in the end, Gibbs, there's really no evidence whatsoever that this man was involved in any of the Connecticut River Valley cases. And then we get to Michael Nicolau. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because we've talked about him on previous episodes. Most notably, Michael Nicolau was brought up, Gibbs, when we talked about the Colonial Parkway murders.
He was, yeah.
In 2001, private investigator Lynn Marie Carty, who we did correspond with regarding the Colonial Parkway murders, she was contacted by the mother of Michelle Marie Ashley. And Ashley was a Vermont woman who had gone missing in December of 1988, along with her 2 children. So the mother reached out to Carty to help her get information about where her daughter might be, along with her 2 grandchildren. The tie-in here is that Michael Nicolau was Michelle Ashley's common law husband. And Michelle's mother believed that he had some involvement with this, or at least knew something about it. Nicolau was a Vietnam veteran. He was a helicopter pilot in the Army. He earned a couple of Purple Hearts, 2 Silver Stars, and 2 Bronze Stars. So that's a lot of accolades that he earned in Vietnam. But in 1970, he was charged, along with 7 other soldiers, with essentially firing on civilians while they were on a reconnaissance mission in the Mekong Delta. So they charged him with murder and attempted murder, but those charges were ultimately dropped. And after returning home, Nicolau would receive treatment at the VA Center for post-traumatic stress disorder. And there would be people from his unit, people that he knew during his time in the Army, that would say that when they were over there, Nicolau would just leave camp and he would go out on his own seeking out the enemy. They basically said he was going out hunting for humans. So Nicolau ends up in Virginia, and with a business partner, he opened and operated a sex store called the Pleasure Chest.
What are those stores, Mike?
I don't know what those are, Gibbs.
You never been to one?
No.
You sure?
No. How dare you even insinuate?
How dare you?
I said good day, sir.
Good day, sir. Good day.
So they raid this store a couple of times. He and his partner get charged with selling obscene materials. And I think they got convicted at least one time of something. But it's in Virginia that Nicolau met Michelle Ashley. And they would eventually move to Holyoke, Massachusetts. And they would have 2 children. Ashley's family also lived in New England. They described Michael Nicolau as strange and quiet. And his marriage to Michelle would become more and more troubled as time went on. You know, at one point she attempted to leave him and was going to take the children with her. And this didn't set well with him, apparently, because he went after her. And during this period where all this is going on, he's making contact with her family. And Ashley's also talking to her family. And during this point, she's telling them that she's afraid for her life.
It's like that movie Enough.
Who's in that?
J-Lo?
J-Lo. Okay.
Where she kicks the guy's ass in the very end.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Well,
It's good.
I think she, kills him in the end.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of this fear, she eventually returns to him. But the whole time, she's telling her family that she's going to leave him for good.
You see that a lot in relationships, bad relationships, abusive relationships, where people want to leave, but they're not prepared to leave. They leave when things get escalated, but because of that, they're really never set up to be, leave on extended time. So they end up coming back. So if you're in a bad relationship, plan it out, man.
Get out,
but plan it out. Otherwise, you come walking right back in.
You got a plan. But it's in December of 88 that Ashley's mother dropped by the house to check on her because she hadn't talked to her for a couple of weeks. And in the fridge, she found spoiled food and basically the residence was vacant. There's no trace of either Ashley, Michael, or the two children.
Which would be weird. I mean, because I'm assuming that your wife and mother-in-law probably talk every day.
Oh, what? My wife and her mom?
Yeah.
Multiple times a day.
Yeah. So it wouldn't take very long if your wife's mom didn't hear from your wife before she'd be over here seeing if anything was wrong.
No.
I mean, probably just a few days, really.
And she'd point the finger directly at me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd point the finger with her. He had me carry something out of the basement. It was heavy, 90 pounds, not sure what it was. But yeah, but to get there and, it's like her coming here and the whole place be cleaned out. It'd be weird.
It'd be an eerie feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. You're not knowing where your daughter or your grandkids were.
So we said it's 2001 when Ashley's mother reaches out to Cardi. That's 13 years later. And Cardi is able to obtain Michael Nicolaou's contact information. He's living in Georgia at the time and denies knowing anything about Ashley or the two kids' whereabouts. But eventually, he would state that Ashley was a slut, she had been doing drugs, and that she had run off and abandoned her children. He stated the children were fine, and the private investigator, Cardi, was able to confirm this by reaching out to one of the children who tearfully described what life had been like with his father, who had since remarried. So now you fast forward to 2005, Nicolaou's second wife is also trying to get away from him after he'd allegedly attacked her. On December 31st of that year, he tracked her down to her sister's home in Tampa, Florida. He's wearing a black suit and tie, carrying a guitar case filled with guns. He goes into the home. He takes his wife and his stepdaughter, who's 20 years old, into a bedroom while his sister-in-law called the police. So police are on their way, including the SWAT team. And during this time, Nicolaou shot his wife, his stepdaughter, and himself. So his wife, Eileen, and Nicolaou, they both die at the scene. The stepdaughter died at the hospital a short time later. So this was a bad scene.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about this on the Colonial Parkway.
Yeah.
This is terrible, terrible, terrible outcome.
But as Cardi is investigating Nicolaou's past, I think she starts to see some ties to the Connecticut River Valley killings. I mean, number one, they took place at around the same time as Michelle's disappearance. One of Nicolaou's ex-wives was a nurse. And you heard that in our descriptions of some of the victims. 3 of the victims were nurses. Nicolaou lived in Holyoke, Massachusetts. It's about 90 miles from Claremont. But he did have relatives in the area. And his wife, Ashley, gave birth in 1986 at the same hospital from which one of the victims, Barbara Agnew, would disappear a short time later. And I think one of the kickers, Gibbs, is allegedly it was determined that Michael Nicolaou owned a Jeep Wagoneer in the late 80s, which, as we know, is consistent with the vehicle described by Jane Borowski.
Exactly.
And Cardi doesn't stop. I mean, she takes this information. She shared some of her findings with Jane. And when Jane looked at a picture of Michael Nicolaou, she said there was some resemblance between that picture and the man that had attacked her. And eventually, Jane would become convinced that it was Michael Nicolaou that was her attacker and also the Connecticut River Valley Killer. So in 2007, New Hampshire cold case detectives stated that they were in the process of examining surviving physical evidence in the cases, as well as Nicolaou's possible connection to the case. But, I mean, to this day, Gibbs, there's really been no public announcements about their findings, and it's not been announced that Nicolaou has been conclusively linked to any of those killings. But there's a lot of smoke there, I guess.
Yeah, and like I said, his name gets tossed around with a lot of that East Coast, serial killings right there, the unsolved stuff. So
we talked about things that might go with that theory. To go against the theory that it was him, Nicolau apparently lived in Virginia at the time of some of the murders. 3, in fact. Doesn't mean he couldn't have traveled. Doesn't mean he couldn't have been in the area at the time, but he was not living in New England at the time of 3 of the murders. And then next, Gibbs, I think we want to talk about a man named Gary Westover. So in October of 1997, Gary Westover was a 46-year-old Grafton, New Hampshire paraplegic. He told his uncle, Howard Menon, who was at that time a retired Grafton County Sheriff's deputy, that he had a confession. And this confession that he made to his uncle was that in 1987, 3 of his buddies picked him up for what he said was supposed to be a night of partying. So he alleged that these 3 guys loaded him and his wheelchair into their van, and they set out to Vermont, where they abducted and murdered and eventually dumped Barbara Agnew, who was the Connecticut River Valley Killer's final victim. And Westover, during this deathbed confession, actually provided the names of the 3 friends that he said he was with that night. So his uncle shared this information with his wife, his daughter, but more importantly, shared it with law enforcement. But they didn't seem to be very interested in this information because not much is known about what, if anything, they did with it, whether they checked into it, whether anything was confirmed. There's just really not that much out there, Gibbs.
No, and I think that's the problem, with these deathbed confessions. Sometimes they just come too late. There's just no way to corroborate the story.
So Gary Westover died in March of 1998, and his uncle, Howard Menon, died in 2006. There were a few other possible victims that I don't think they're not officially included in what's known as the Connecticut River Valley killings, but it's possible that they could be. So the first one is Joanne Dunham. She was 14 years old when she was sexually assaulted and strangled on June 11th, 1968 in Charlestown, New Hampshire.
So the oldest one.
That would be, way before any of the other ones, especially any of the official killings. On October 5th, 1982, 76-year-old Sylvia Gray was found bludgeoned and stabbed to death in a wooded area just a few hundred yards from her home in Plainfield, New Hampshire, a day after she was reported missing. Now, this one, Gibbs, we really didn't talk about the ages of the victims. I mean, we mentioned them, but we didn't say that, 76 would be way above any of the other ages of the victim.
Yeah, I would say, I think the oldest victim that we were talking about was 36, so 40 years older.
So I think it would be outside of the, not that it couldn't be, but I think if you're talking about it, no, Barbara Agnew was 38.
38, okay, so almost 40 years.
But still, I mean, close, yeah. 36, 38, one victim was 37, but there was a range between 16 and 38, let's just say that. So 76 is pretty far outside of that range. Now, 38-year-old Stephen Hill was last seen on June 20th, 1986. He was retrieving his paycheck from his Lebanon, New Hampshire employer. On July 15th, Hill's body was found with multiple stab wounds in Heartland across the Connecticut River from where Gray's body had been found 4 years earlier. So, I mean, the connections there are what? The stab wounds, the location of the body, but now we're talking about a man.
Yeah, so I don't know if that really relates because it's not part of the MO, but you just never know.
These are other people. They're victims of unsolved crimes. So, possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, just because they're in and around that area and a lot of similarities with some of the things that happened.
On June 24th, 1988, Decomposed body parts consisting of arms and legs belonging to a woman were found dumped alongside Route 78 in Warwick, Massachusetts. And this is less than a mile from the New Hampshire border. Investigators believe that the entire body was dismembered, that the head and torso were never found, and the thought is that they were disposed of somewhere else. The death was ruled a homicide, and the victim was described as Caucasian, average height, with an athletic body type. But this woman's identity is still unknown, and the homicide is unsolved. So I guess with this one, Gibbs, this would have been before the last known Connecticut River Valley killing, which was in August of 88. So this is June. So it's in the time frame that we know that this serial killer is operating, close to the New Hampshire border. But again, there's really nothing that ties it. The thing that I would say is hard for me to put this one in is because nobody else was dismembered, right? They were stabbed. They were not dismembered. That seems to be a big change from all the other known killings.
Yes. So this is where I always go back around on all these solved and unsolved, just bad people everywhere, man. Because if this is not the same guy doing all this, it's a mix of people, a small geographical area. That's scary, man. It's just really scary that there's that many people doing that.
There's a lot of bad people out there, man.
I know. And I should know that with everything that we do, but
you do know that. It just doesn't stop you from being amazed, I think, when we do these episodes, that there's so many people being murdered in and around the same place.
Yeah.
Probably multiple people committing the murders. I think that's sometimes hard to wrap your head around.
I mean, the odds are heavy that somebody listening to us has a neighbor.
Are you just trying to scare everyone?
That is a potential killer, man. That's what.
So Gibbs think, if you're surrounded by 4 houses,
Yeah,
one out of those 4 houses contains a murderer.
exactly.
It's up to you to figure out which house it is.
Which one is it?
Or just put your house up for sale right now.
And if you can't figure out which one it is,
it's you.
Exactly, it's you.
And then the last person to talk about is 14-year-old Carrie Moss. She was from New Boston, New Hampshire, and she left her parents' home on July 25th, 1989 to visit some friends in Goffstown, and she disappeared. Almost exactly 2 years later, on July 4th, 91, her skeletal remains were found in a wooded area in New Boston. Now, they couldn't figure out her cause of death, but they did rule it as a homicide. So again, just another unsolved murder. Is it part of this? Could it be the same person? Yeah, it definitely could be. Now, this would be after what is today considered the last known Connecticut Valley River victim. But that doesn't mean it's not, not part of it. The one thing I do know, Gibbs, is that there were some bad people operating in and around this area.
Yeah.
If one person was responsible for the 7 victims that we talked about initially, which is what police believe, you had a very bad individual who, as of right now, has gotten away with some horrific crimes.
Yeah, terrible, man. And then if you want to try to blend that same person in with the Colonial and all the other killings around there, I mean, it would just be, oh my gosh.
I do go back to that Michael Nicolau because, talking about Jane Borowski, and Jane is really the only person that can really weigh in on this.
Yeah, it's true.
And saying that, okay, he bears a resemblance.
Yeah.
And then over time, I got the impression or the feeling that she started to believe that, yes, it was him.
Well,
And
I'm not going to discount what she has to say. She survived unbelievable attack.
yeah. And the thing about Nicolau is it's not like we're talking about a good guy that looked like her attacker.
Right.
This was a guy that we know was in the area of some of the attacks.
Yeah.
Went on to do some horrible things, ended up killing himself.
Well, and he had a very disturbed past.
He did.
Mean, a lot of claims from people close to him in the service that he would actually go out and seek to kill somebody.
Yeah, he said he was hunting humans.
Yeah. So, when coming back from Vietnam, if that's how he was over there and he wasn't able to, shake that or
get help.
Or get help. And maybe he had some help, but I just think that he really enjoyed what he did over there as far as the hunting of individuals, that when he came back here, it was just an extension of that and actually probably just a little bit easier for him. And I don't want to call it a hobby, but maybe it was.
So we're obviously not saying it was him, but
No.
in talking about could it be him?
Right.
Let's go back and kind of go full circle back to the beginning where we talked about, these are stabbing deaths, very up close. And then when you hear his fellow Army soldiers talk about the fact that he was out searching for hand-to-hand combat with the enemy, there's a little bit of a tie-in there, right? If this is somebody that likes up close killing, you could make that
Sure.
tie.
Sure. And because the fact that he's done it before in combat, right? I mean, to attack somebody here and stab them 20 sometimes, probably a little bit easy. I hate to say easier. If you had to go out and stab somebody 20 times right now, it'd be very difficult for you.
Well, I'm not trained the way that an Army person or Marine is trained in hand-to-hand combat.
Sure.
I've never received that type of training. But Michael Nicolau did.
Right.
And again, not saying he did it, just talking about if it really was him, these are some of the factors I think that would.
I think he had the capacity to do it, right? I mean, he had the skill set.
He had the skill set. We know he had the capacity. Look at what he actually did,
Right.
on top of some of the other things that he was suspected of.
He had the mindset, so.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, it's one of those that's frustrating because you'd really like to know who was responsible. Again, could they solve this one? Yeah, I think they could at some point in time.
Yeah, let's hope so.
But that's it. That's the case of the Connecticut River Valley Killer.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, we've got some voicemails.
Let's do it.
Want to hear those?
Hi, Mike and Gibby. It's Caroline Louise here, phoning from England. Sort of represent the British listeners. Don't seem to get that many voicemails. Anyway, I'm from Clitheroe, carefully I pronounce that, which is about an hour north of Manchester and an hour south of the Lake District. Anybody who knows England at all. I felt quite compelled to contact you after hearing Jenna's voicemail. I've literally just listened to it in the car on the way home from work. I found it really moving, and I just really felt like I wanted to phone to just say that I hadn't really thought about it before, but she's right, what she says regarding how you deliver and present the podcast. You don't sensationalise or glorify the murders, and you really, considerate and sensitive with the information and regarding the victims, and you put their points across really well. And I hadn't really thought about it before, and I think that's probably why I find it, a nice one to listen to in that way, the banter as well. And also, on a less serious note, at the end of the podcast, I happened to hear you were talking about the 911 calls, and it just reminded me, I know I'd posted on Facebook about KFC running out of chicken in England recently, and the police had to ask people stopped phoning them about the fact they had no chicken. And it just tickled me, so I thought I'd share that with you. So anyway, keep your own time ticking, and I don't know which team I am, possibly make the double one up, either Team Fibbit or Furby. I think we need to start that one. So anyway, bye from England.
So great voicemail from Caroline. I will say, Gibbs, she has an amazing English accent.
She does, and it's always interesting for me because, so on Facebook, you talk to, message people back and forth or post and things, comment and do all that. Mm-hmm. And you see their picture and, you know, I know she's in England and you know, beautiful family and all that. But you never hear their voice. So then you get to hear the voice.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it just kind of puts it all together. So
yeah. So, but we appreciate the nice comments.
Absolutely.
That she made.
Yeah, she's a lovely lady.
That is something that we strive to do.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, Shannon in Denver again. Probably getting tired of hearing from me. But I was just listening to the Tylenol murders, and I wanted to say that actually Gibby is 100% right. You do alternate Tylenol with Advil every 4 to 6 hours because Tylenol is super bad for your liver. And so they recommend that, especially in children, you alternate it. You can give it for high fevers and other illnesses. Anyway, just wanted to clarify that. I'm sure you've gotten 15 other calls about this. You guys are awesome. Keep your own time ticking. Talk to you soon.
All right, Shannon, coming in, having my back.
Yeah, and a lot of people did, and I have to own up to that. I was totally wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. Back to some weird thing I had probably heard where it's not like beer before liquor, but it was something similar to that, where if you're taking acetaminophen, don't switch to something else. And I don't know why, but obviously I'm wrong.
Maybe you're thinking of aspirin or something like that.
Maybe. And maybe with the new stuff, it doesn't matter with the Motrin and Advil and Aleve and
but at least,
stuff like
Shannon, thank you. Love my Denver peeps.
And we never get tired of hearing from Shannon. So,
hello, my name is Tessa. I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I just started listening to y'all. And I've been thinking about calling in, and today I decided to because I'm listening to one of the podcasts, and y'all were talking about Gibbs singing Johnny Cash. And I love Johnny, and I really think Gibbs should sing Johnny Cash so we can all hear him do that. I like your show. I've shared it with one of my friends already, and hopefully he listens. I find your podcast very, very interesting and definitely puts me on high alert when I'm out and about and by myself. So I guess keep up the good work and keep your own time ticking, and I'll keep listening. Have a great day. Bye.
all right, Gibbs.
That's a good voicemail.
It is.
I tell you what, our Colorado is representing. I mean, we got Colorado Springs, Denver. You know, we got a lot of folks that on the Facebook page that are from that area, so that's cool.
Yeah, they got that legal marijuana now.
Well, that's true. They're more relaxed.
It's more relaxed.
More
than they
relaxed
used to
up
be.
there. Sit back and relax. Yeah, go to the what do they call that? The Red Rocks.
Yeah, Red Rock Amphitheater.
Yeah, sit back, listen to some tunes while you.
All right, stop stalling and sing Johnny Cash.
Well, no, I don't do that for free.
I'll pay you.
Well, you can't afford me.
All right. Well, we appreciate the voicemails and we appreciate everyone listening.
We do. We love y'all.
Yep. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
And Gibby.
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.